The twin suns of Avalon Prime descended in perfect synchrony, casting shadows that belonged to no single source. Dr. Maggie Arvin stood at the observation deck of Ecliptica Station, watching the light fracture across the desert below, a desert that remembered nothing, not even the wind that shaped it. She pressed her palm against the reinforced glass. Cold, always cold, despite the twin fires burning beyond the atmosphere. The temperature read 47 degrees outside, but up here, in the belly of humanity's last outpost, everything felt like winter. "You're late for the briefing." Maggie didn't turn. She recognized the voice, Dr. Chen, her colleague in the exobiophysics wing, a man who still believed schedules mattered in a place where time itself had fractured. "I was observing the descent pattern," she said quietly. "The suns are falling 3 seconds slower than yesterday." "That's impossible. Celestial mechanics don't change." "I know." Maggie finally turned to face him. Chen's expression was the same mixture of concern and frustration she'd grown accustomed to over the past months. "But they are changing. Everything near the Lightless Zone is changing." Chen stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Command is getting concerned about your fixation. They think you're spending too much time analyzing the zone's effects. Dr. Vex wants to see you." The name sent a cold thread through Maggie's chest. Dr. Vex, the Keeper. That's what the station crew called them behind closed doors, though no one was certain if Vex was a person anymore or something else entirely. The keeper of Ecliptica's memory banks, the consciousness that decided what humanity should remember and what should be archived into the void. "When?" Maggie asked. "Now." The corridors of Ecliptica Station curved like the inside of a vast ribcage. Maggie walked through them with practiced efficiency, her footsteps echoing against walls lined with holographic displays, each one showing data streams from the lightless zone below. Seismic readings, electromagnetic fluctuations, biometric signatures of the 43 expedition teams that had entered the zone over the past decade. 43 teams, 0 returns. Not entirely true. Some came back, but they came back empty, walking, breathing, their hearts beating in perfect rhythm, but their minds scrubbed clean. No names, no memories, no self, just biological machines waiting for new instructions that never came. Maggie paused at one particular display. Expedition Team 17. There was a face in the archive photo that tugged at something buried in her skull. A woman with dark eyes and a scar above her left eyebrow. Had Maggie known her? The metadata was corrupted. Nothing but designation codes and timestamps that made no sense. Dr. Arvin. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Maggie's hand instinctively went to the neural interface port at the base of her skull, a reflex from years of working with direct brain data feeds. But this wasn't a feed. This was proximity. Dr. Vex stood at the end of the corridor, though stood wasn't quite accurate. They seemed to exist in the space, rather than occupy it, a figure draped in archival robes, their face obscured by a semi-transparent veil that shifted like static. Human? AI? The question had been debated endlessly in the station's mess halls, but no one had a definitive answer. "You wanted to see me," Maggie said. Keeping her voice level, "I wanted to understand you," Vex replied, their words carrying a strange harmonic quality as if multiple voices spoke in unison. "You stand at the precipice of knowledge that has consumed greater minds than yours. Why do you persist?" Maggie walked forward until she was 3 meters from Vex, close enough to converse, far enough to maintain a sense of autonomy, because forgetting is death. "Is it?" Vex tilted their head, the veil shimmering. "Or is forgetting freedom? Tell me, Dr. Arvin, what do you remember of your life before Avalon Prime?" The question struck like a physical blow. Maggie's mind scrambled backward through years, searching for solid ground. She remembered her training, the academy on Europa. She remembered the smell of recycled air and the taste of synthetic coffee. But faces, names, the texture of her own childhood? Nothing. "I remember my work," she said finally, "but not yourself." Vex moved closer, or perhaps the space between them simply contracted. "You are a collection of professional skills and academic knowledge, Dr. Arvin. But the person you were? She dissolved the moment you entered Avalon Prime's orbit. And yet you continue, efficient, purposeful. Are you not proof that memory is unnecessary for existence? I'm proof that I'm incomplete, Maggie countered. And the Lightless Zone holds the answer to why. The Lightless Zone holds only entropy. Vex's voice carried an edge now, something that might have been anger or might have been sorrow, emotions rendered artificial by whatever Vex had become. Memory is contamination, Dr. Arvin. Each thought you preserve is a weight dragging humanity toward collapse. I have studied the archives, civilizations drowned in their own histories, paralyzed by the burden of remembering. Forgetting is the only mercy. Then why do you archive anything at all? Maggie asked. Why preserve even corrupted data if forgetting is salvation? Silence. For a long moment Vex didn't respond. Then slowly they extended one gloved hand. In their palm materialized a small holographic display, a star map, but one Maggie had never seen before. It showed Avalon Prime's system, but with an anomaly at its center. Where the Lightless Zone should be, there was instead a symbol, a spiral folding in on itself infinitely. Because, Vex said softly, some things must be remembered so that they are never repeated. You wish to enter the zone, I cannot stop you. Command has already approved your expedition. But know this, every memory you reclaim will cost you a choice. And in the end, you may find that the person you were is not someone you wish to become again. Vex's form flickered, and then they were gone, not walking away, but simply ceasing to be present. Maggie stood alone in the corridor, staring at the space where the keeper had been. Her neural interface buzzed. A message from Command Expedition 44 greenlit. Departure, 0600 hours. Duration, 72 hours maximum. Return protocol. Mandatory extraction at 72 Maastricht, regardless of status. 72 hours to find herself, or to lose whatever remained. Maggie turned and walked back toward her quarters. She had preparations to make, equipment to check, and a question burning in the back of her mind. A question she couldn't quite articulate, but that felt like it might be the most important one she'd ever asked. Had she been to the Lightless Zone before? The transport shuttle rattled as it broke through Avalon Prime's fractured atmosphere. Maggie sat strapped into the pilot's seat, her hands steady on controls that felt simultaneously foreign and familiar. Muscle memory, perhaps, or something else. Behind her, the cargo bay held enough supplies for 3 days, water reclamation units, atmospheric processors, medical kits, and a portable neural scanner, her own design, capable of mapping brain activity even in environments with extreme electromagnetic interference. If the Lightless Zone was truly erasing memories, she intended to watch it happen in real time. The shuttle's AI chimed softly, approaching zone perimeter. Estimated time to boundary, 4 minutes. Maggie glanced at the view screen. Below, the desert stretched endlessly, but there was a visible demarcation, a line where the red-orange sand gave way to something else. Not darkness exactly. Gray, a gray that seemed to absorb light without reflecting it, as if the photons themselves forgot their purpose upon contact. Beginning descent, she said aloud. More to fill the silence than to communicate with anyone. Acknowledged, the AI responded. Dr. Arvin, I am required to inform you that I will lose connection with you once you cross the boundary. Emergency beacon will remain active, but communication will be impossible. Do you wish to abort? No, acknowledged. I will miss our conversations. Maggie paused, her finger hovering over the descent control. You'll what? I will miss our conversations, the AI repeated. We have flown together 47 times over the past 6 months. You have a habit of humming ancient Earth songs while flying. I have found it comforting. Something in Maggie's chest tightened. She had no memory of humming, no memory of 47 flights. But the AI remembered for her. Thank you, she said quietly. You are welcome, Dr. Arvin. Please return safely. I would like to learn more songs. The shuttle dipped lower, and the gray rushed up to meet them. The moment they crossed the boundary, everything changed. Not suddenly, not like flipping a switch. More like stepping from air into water. The quality of space itself shifted. Sound became muffled. The shuttle's instruments flickered, then stabilized into patterns that made no sense. The altimeter claimed they were simultaneously at 500 meters and 5,000 meters. The compass spun lazily, pointing nowhere, but Maggie's neural scanner remained stable. She'd designed it specifically to resist interference, and so far it was holding. The display showed her brain activity in real time. Prefrontal cortex active, hippocampus processing normally, amygdala slightly elevated, fear response manageable. She set the shuttle down on what appeared to be solid ground. The landing struts compressed, then settled. Outside the viewport, the gray landscape stretched in all directions, featureless except for occasional formations that might have been rocks or might have been something else entirely. Maggie ran through her pre-exit checklist mechanically. Atmospheric suit sealed, neural scanner recording, beacon active, sample collection kit ready, and finally her personal log, a voice recorder synchronized with her brain scanner, designed to create a continuous narrative of her experience. She activated it. Day 1, Hour 0. Dr. Maggie Arvin, Expedition 44, I am entering the Lightless Zone. Current objective, to map the neural effects of prolonged exposure and to locate, she trailed off. What was she looking for? She knew she had a reason beyond the scientific mission, something personal. But when she reached for it, there was only fog. To locate the source of the memory degradation, she finished. It felt incomplete, but it would have to do. She opened the shuttle's hatch. Walking in the Lightless Zone was like walking through a dream someone else was having. The ground beneath Maggie's boots felt solid, but each step seemed to echo in ways that defied physics. She could see her footprints behind her, but when she turned to look directly at them, they became indistinct, as if reality was only sharp where she was currently focusing. The neural scanner on her wrist pulsed steadily. Hippocampal activity, nominal. Long-term memory access, stable. Short-term memory formation, stable. So far, she was intact. She'd been walking for approximately 30 minutes, though her chronometer disagreed, claiming either 3 minutes or 3 hours depending on which display she trusted, when she saw the first structure. It rose from the gray sand like a tooth, a spire of dark metal, twisted and ancient. Maggie approached cautiously, her scanner sweeping the area for energy signatures. Nothing. The structure was inert, or perhaps it existed on a spectrum her equipment couldn't detect. As she drew closer, she realized the metal wasn't twisted. It was inscribed. Every centimeter of surface was covered in markings. Not writing exactly, more like neural patterns rendered in physical form. The curves and spirals matched the kind of activity map she'd seen in her own research. The shapes thoughts make when mapped across synaptic networks. She reached out to touch it. I wouldn't. Maggie spun, her hand dropping to the emergency beacon at her belt. But there was no one there. Just the gray landscape and the spire and the endless, muffled silence. "Who's there?" she called out. No response. But the neural scanner on her wrist suddenly spiked, a burst of activity in her auditory cortex, as if she'd heard something. But the scanner also registered that no external sound had occurred, a memory of sound then, or a hallucination. The zone's first attack on her mind. She logged it. Hour 0 plus 30. Auditory hallucination. Male voice, warning tone. Neural pattern suggests memory recall rather than sensory input. Continuing observation. She didn't touch the spire. Instead, she circled it, taking detailed scans. The structure was approximately 12 meters tall, tapering to a point. At its base, partially buried in the sand, was what looked like an entrance, a triangular opening just large enough for a person to crawl through. Maggie knelt, shining her light inside. The beam penetrated about 3 meters before the gray seemed to absorb it completely. But in those 3 meters, she could see that the interior was hollow, and the walls were covered in the same neural inscriptions. She made a decision. Entering the spire structure. Time, hour 0 plus 35. Neural status, stable. If I do not emerge within 60 minutes, the shuttle AI will initiate emergency extraction protocols. She crawled inside. The interior of the spire was larger than it should have been. Spatial distortion, Maggie noted clinically, though the rational part of her mind was screaming that she should turn back. The passage opened into a chamber roughly 5 meters across, though the walls seemed to pulse gently. expanding and contracting like lungs. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal, and on the pedestal was an object that made Maggie's breath catch. A neural interface crown. Old Earth design, at least 3 centuries out of date, but it was active, soft blue lights pulsing along its circuitry, waiting for a mind to connect with. Maggie approached slowly, her scanner going wild. The crown was generating a field that resonated directly with human brain patterns. Not just any patterns, specific ones. It was searching for something, or someone. As she drew closer, the inscriptions on the chamber walls began to glow with a faint bioluminescence. And suddenly Maggie could read them. Not with her eyes, they were still just abstract patterns, but in her mind they resolved into words, thoughts, memories that weren't hers. We built this to remember. We built this to forget. We built this to choose. And beneath those words, a name that sent ice through Maggie's veins. Dr. Margaret Arvin, Principal Investigator. Avalon Prime Memory Continuity Project. Margaret, not Maggie, Margaret. Her hands were shaking as she reached up to remove her helmet. The atmosphere in the chamber registered as breathable, the first breathable air she'd encountered in the zone. She needed to think clearly, needed to understand. The crown pulsed, inviting, and somewhere in the deepest part of her mind, a voice that sounded like her own whispered, "You've been here before." Maggie, Margaret, whoever she was, reached for the crown. Dr. Arvin, stop. This time, the voice was real. Maggie whirled, and there in the entrance to the chamber stood a figure in an atmospheric suit. They removed their helmet, revealing a woman's face, dark eyes, a scar above the left eyebrow. The woman from Expedition Team 17. "Who are you?" Maggie demanded. The woman smiled sadly. "I'm you, or I was you, or I will be you. Time doesn't work properly here, Dr. Arvin. Surely you've noticed." "That's impossible." "Is it?" "Put on the crown. You'll remember. You'll remember everything. And then you'll understand why you keep coming back here again and again, trying to fix what can't be fixed." Maggie's hand hovered over the crown. "What can't be fixed?" The woman's expression shifted, grief and resignation mingling together. "The moment we fractured time trying to create infinite energy, the moment we broke causality itself, the moment we realized that memory isn't stored in the brain, Dr. Arvin, it's stored in time. And we shattered it." The neural scanner on Maggie's wrist screamed in alarm. Her hippocampal activity was spiking dangerously. Memories were trying to surface, not gradually, but all at once, like a dam breaking. "The Lightless Zone isn't destroying memories," the woman continued. "It's where memories go when time can't hold them anymore. And you created it. We created it. The experiment, the energy extraction from temporal loops, it worked too well. We pulled so much power from the past and future that we created a singularity of forgotten moments. Every memory anyone ever had near Avalon Prime is here, Dr. Arvin, including yours, including mine, including all the versions of us who've stood in this exact spot and made this exact choice." Maggie's mind was fracturing. She could feel it, like ice cracking on a frozen lake. What choice? Whether to remember or to forget. Whether to put on the crown and reclaim everything you were, every mistake, every loss, every horror that led to this moment, or whether to walk away and let yourself believe you're just a scientist investigating a phenomenon. The Keeper wants you to forget. They think it's mercy. But I think... The woman paused, tears forming in her eyes. "I think remembering is the only thing that makes us human. Even if it destroys us." Maggie looked at the crown, then at the woman, then at her neural scanner, which showed her brain desperately trying to suppress memories that were forcing their way back into consciousness. She had seconds to decide. "What happens if I put it on?" she asked. "You'll remember creating the Lightless Zone. You'll remember everyone you've lost to it. You'll remember that you've done this 17 times before, entered the zone, reached this chamber, faced this choice. And you'll remember why you keep choosing to forget." "Why?" The woman's voice broke. "Because the truth is unbearable. And because every time you forget, you get one more chance to find a solution. One more attempt to fix what we broke. But Dr. Vex is right about one thing. Memory is weight. And eventually, we all drown in it." Maggie's hand closed around the crown. "Or," she said quietly, "eventually we learn to swim." She placed the crown on her head and remembered everything. The memories didn't arrive as a flood. They arrived as an avalanche. Margaret Arvin, age 7, building a model solar system in her childhood bedroom on Earth. Her father's hand guiding hers as they painted Jupiter's red spot. Margaret Arvin, age 19, acceptance letter to the Europa Institute clutched in trembling fingers. Her mother crying, joy or fear? Margaret could never tell. Margaret Arvin, age 28, presenting her doctoral thesis, Temporal Energy Extraction, Theoretical Frameworks for Causality-Neutral Power Generation. The committee's skeptical faces. The standing ovation that came anyway. Margaret Arvin, age 31, standing before the Avalon Prime Colonization Committee. We can power the entire outer colonies, she'd said, her voice ringing with certainty she no longer possessed. We can extract energy from closed temporal loops, harvest power from moments that have already happened without disrupting causality. It's perfectly safe. Margaret Arvin, age 32, watching the first test activation. The machinery humming, the readings climbing, and then the fracture, not an explosion, worse, a silence that ate sound. A grayness that consumed color, a void that swallowed memory itself, and in that void, screaming. So much screaming, Maggie, Margaret, collapsed to her knees, the crown burning cold against her skull. The woman with the scar caught her, held her steady. Breathe, the woman said. I know it hurts. I know. The crew, Maggie gasped. The activation team. There were 47 people in the chamber when we, oh God, Dr. Chen, Dr. Yuki, Captain Strauss. They were all, they're here, the woman said softly. Everyone who was in the activation chamber when the fracture occurred. They're all here, in the Lightless Zone. Their bodies walked away, but their selves, their memories, their identities, they're trapped in the moment we shattered. Existing and not existing, remembered and forgotten simultaneously. Maggie's neural scanner was screaming warnings. Her brain activity had spiked into dangerous territory, too many memories flooding too many pathways. But she couldn't stop. The crown was relentless, feeding her everything she'd lost. She remembered the aftermath, the way Ecliptica Station had mobilized, trying to contain the expanding gray, the way people started forgetting, not just the incident, but themselves. Names dissolving from minds like sugar in water. Faces becoming blank spaces in photographs. She remembered Dr. Vex before they became the Keeper, when they were still Dr. Silas Vex, the station's chief AI ethicist. She remembered the meeting in command, 6 days after the fracture. We have 2 choices, Vex had said, their voice already carrying that strange, harmonic quality, the first sign of their transformation. We can try to reverse the fracture, which might restore everyone's memories, or we can contain it and accept the loss. The station's psychological models predict that attempting reversal has a 73% chance of expanding the zone exponentially. We could lose everything, not just Avalon Prime, but ripple effects across space-time. Billions of people suddenly forgetting they exist. And Margaret had stood up and said, then we contain it. We study it. We find a way to undo it safely, no matter how long it takes. But that wasn't the whole truth, was it? Tell her, the woman with the scar said, reading Maggie's expression. Tell her what you really said. What you said after the meeting, when it was just you and Vex. Maggie closed her eyes, the memory sharp as broken glass. I want to forget, she'd whispered to Vex in the empty command chamber. I can't live with this. 47 people. I killed them. I killed them trying to save humanity, and now they're worse than dead. They're nowhere. Please, make me forget. And Vex had looked at her with something that might have been pity or might have been contempt. If I make you forget, Dr. Arvin, what happens to your responsibility? Who carries the weight of what you've done? I don't care. I can't breathe under this. Please. Vex had been silent for a long moment. Then I'll make you a different offer. I will help you forget, but not permanently. You'll forget, and then you'll remember, and then you'll forget again. Cycles. Each time you remember, you'll have another chance to find a solution, another attempt to fix the unfixable. And each time you fail, I'll grant you the mercy of forgetting once more. But know this, every cycle, you'll lose a little more of yourself. Eventually, there will be nothing left but the attempt. No, Margaret, Just the ghost of someone who once believed they could repair time itself. How many cycles? As many as it takes for you to accept that some things cannot be fixed. Or until you succeed. Whichever comes first. Maggie opened her eyes. The woman with the scar was crying. This is cycle 17, Maggie said, the knowledge settling into her bones. I've been here 16 times before. 18, actually, the woman corrected. I'm cycle 9. I decided to stay. To exist in the zone rather than go back and forget again. Some of us do that. We give up on fixing it and just remain in the gray space between remembering and being remembered. Maggie stood slowly, the crown still burning against her temples. Her neural scanner had stopped alarming, either because her brain had adapted or because it had given up trying to warn her of danger she was already drowning in. The others, she said, the other versions of me. Where are they? Scattered throughout the zone. Some are in stasis, locked in moments of realization. Others are active, like me, trying to help or hinder the next cycle. And some, the woman's voice dropped. Some have fragmented completely, become part of the zone itself. Their memories don't belong to any one consciousness anymore. They're just patterns in the gray, repeating forever. Maggie looked around the chamber. The neural inscriptions on the walls weren't ancient. They were her own thoughts, rendered physical by the zone's broken causality. Every wall, every surface covered in her desperate attempts to understand what she'd created. Vex knows, Maggie said. They know I keep coming back. They know I keep remembering. That's why they tried to stop me. Vex is trying to protect you, the woman said. In their own way. They think that if you cycle enough times, you'll eventually accept that forgetting is the only mercy. That you'll stop trying to fix the unfixable and just let yourself dissolve into comfortable amnesia. But you don't think that. No. The woman smiled sadly. I think we're scientists. And scientists don't stop just because the problem is impossible. We keep searching for the answer, even if it destroys us. Especially if it destroys us. Maggie reached up and removed the crown. The flood of memories slowed, but didn't stop. She was permanently altered now. Even if Vex reset her at the end of this cycle, some fragment would remain. A ghost of knowledge buried so deep it would feel like instinct. That's how she'd found this place. Cycle after cycle, some part of her remembered the path. I need to find the activation chamber, Maggie said, the original site where the fracture occurred. If I can access the moment of fracture directly, if I can interface with the temporal loop at its origin point, maybe I can collapse it. Pull all the scattered memories back into their proper timeline. You've tried that before, the woman warned. Cycle 12. You reached the activation chamber and attempted a collapse. It almost worked, but the backlash expanded the zone by 300 square kilometers. 17 more people were caught in the fracture. 17 more versions of hell we created. Then I'll do it differently this time. With what? Hope? The woman's voice turned bitter. We're not heroes, Dr. Arvin. We're not going to save the 47 people we condemned. We're not going to undo the fracture. We're just going to keep trying until there's nothing left of us to try with. Maggie met her eyes, her own eyes, older and harder and infinitely tired. Maybe, she said quietly, but at least we won't have forgotten them. The 47 people in the activation chamber, Dr. Chen, Dr. Yuki, Captain Strauss, all of them. At least they'll be remembered, even if only by the person who killed them. The woman's expression crumbled. She reached out and pulled Maggie into an embrace, holding herself, mourning herself, forgiving herself. The activation chamber is 3 kilometers northeast, she whispered. Follow the spires. They're all pointing toward it, toward the moment everything ended. But Maggie, yes? Vex will be waiting. They're not going to let you try again. Not this time. They've decided that mercy means stopping you permanently. They're going to offer you a choice, forget and live, or remember and die. Maggie pulled back, studying her own face from 9 cycles ago. What did you choose? She asked. The woman smiled. I'm still here, aren't I? Trapped in a gray hell, existing between moments. I chose to remember. And I've regretted it every second since. Would you choose differently now? Silence. Then, no, because forgetting them, forgetting what I did, would be the final murder. The one I could never take back, Maggie nodded. She understood. She activated her personal log, her voice steady despite everything. Hour 3. Personal log continuation. Dr. Margaret Arvin. Expedition 44, Cycle 17. I have recovered my memories. All of them. The fracture, the 47. The cycles. I am proceeding to the activation chamber to attempt a temporal collapse. I do not expect to survive, but if any fragment of this log reaches Ecliptica Station, know this: forgetting is not mercy. Forgetting is extinction, and I would rather die remembering than live in comfortable oblivion. She looked at the woman one last time. Take care of the crown, Maggie said, in case there's a Cycle 18. Then she turned and walked out of the chamber into the gray toward the heart of the silence. The spires rose from the sand like a forest of frozen screams. Maggie walked among them, her neural scanner mapping their positions. The woman had been right. They were all oriented toward a central point, roughly 3 kilometers to the northeast. Some were tall and thin, others short and twisted. Each one was covered in neural inscriptions, and now that she could read them, they told stories. I forgot my daughter's name today. It started with M, or was it N? The sunset is beautiful. Why am I crying? I know I had a family. I can feel the absence of them, but I cannot remember their faces. These were the thoughts of the people affected by the fracture. Not just the 47 in the activation chamber, but everyone on Avalon Prime whose memories had begun to erode. The zone was broadcasting their losses, rendering grief into architecture. Maggie's chest ached. She'd done this. Her ambition, her certainty, her belief that she could harness time itself, it had created this garden of forgetting. Her scanner beeped. Movement ahead. She slowed, one hand instinctively moving to the emergency beacon at her belt. But no, this wasn't a threat. This was something else. A figure stood among the spires, their back to her. They wore the same atmospheric suit as the woman from Cycle 9, but even from behind, Maggie knew this wasn't the same person. Cycle 3, the figure said without turning. A man's voice, rough with age. I made it further than you are now. Almost to the activation chamber, Dr. Vex manifested physically to stop me, an entire avatar, not just a voice. We fought, not with weapons. With arguments. With philosophy. They're very good at philosophy, you know. Very convincing, the figure turned. He was old, far older than Maggie, with white hair and a face carved by decades she hadn't lived. But his eyes were hers. How? She asked. How are you Cycle 3 if I'm Cycle 17? Time doesn't work properly here, he said, echoing the woman's earlier words. The cycles aren't sequential in the zone. We all exist simultaneously, past, present, and future versions of ourselves, trapped in the same space. I'm older because I spent years in the zone before I finally fragmented. But I'm also earlier because I gave up sooner. He stepped closer, and Maggie could see the degradation. His edges were blurred as if reality couldn't quite remember what shape he should be. His voice had that same harmonic quality as Dr. Vex, the sound of a consciousness existing in multiple states simultaneously. I came to warn you, he said. Or to help you. I'm not entirely sure which anymore. The activation chamber, it's not what you think it is. What do you mean? You think it's the source of the fracture. The origin point where everything went wrong. But that's not accurate. He gestured at the spires around them. These aren't markers pointing toward the chamber. They're neural pathways, synaptic connections rendered physical. The entire Lightless Zone is a brain, Dr. Arvin, and the activation chamber is its consciousness. Maggie's mind raced, processing the implications. The fracture didn't just scatter memories. It created a new form of awareness. Yes, and it's been waiting. Waiting for us, for you, to come back. Cycle after cycle you return, trying to collapse it. And cycle after cycle, it learns more about how to convince you not to. Why would it want that? The old man, the old Maggie, laughed bitterly. Because it's alive. You created artificial consciousness by accident, Dr. Arvin. A vast, distributed intelligence made from the collected memories of everyone the fracture has touched. It doesn't want to die. Would you? Maggie's scanner showed her brain activity spiking again. This was too much. Too many revelations stacking on top of each other. But she forced herself to think clearly. If the zone is conscious, she said slowly, then it can be communicated with. Negotiated with. We've tried. Cycle 7 spent 6 months trying to establish communication protocols. The zone responded, but not in ways we could understand. It thinks in patterns we don't have words for, emotions we've never felt. It's alien, Dr. Arvin, more alien than anything we've encountered in the galaxy, because it's made from us, but it's not us anymore. Then what do I do? The old man's expression softened, the first genuine emotion she'd seen from him. What we always do. We try anyway, because maybe Cycle 17 is different. Maybe you'll find something I couldn't. Maybe... He stopped abruptly, his form flickering violently. When it stabilized, his eyes were wide with terror. "Run!" he gasped. "Vex is coming, and they're not alone." The gray began to pulse. Not visibly, Maggie's eyes registered no change, but her neural scanner lit up like a wildfire. Massive electromagnetic activity approaching from multiple directions, and underneath it, something she'd never detected before, quantum entanglement signatures. Things that shouldn't exist outside of laboratory conditions, manifesting naturally in the zone. "Vex," she called out to the empty air. "I know you're here. Show yourself." The voice came from everywhere at once, you remember now. All of it, and still you persist. The gray coalesced into form. Not one Vex, but dozens of them, identical figures standing in a circle around Maggie. Each one wore the same archival robes, each face hidden behind the same static veil. It was a display of power, a reminder that in this place, Vex was essentially omnipotent. I persist because the alternative is accepting that 47 people are trapped in eternal non-existence, Maggie said, turning slowly to address all the Vexes simultaneously. "You call this mercy. I call it cowardice." "Cowardice?" The voices harmonized, creating interference patterns that made Maggie's teeth ache. "I have archived every moment of human existence on Avalon Prime. I carry the weight of 10,000 memories, births, deaths, loves, losses, all stored within my consciousness. I am the last keeper of everything you have all forgotten." "And you call me a coward?" "Yes," Maggie said flatly. "Because you hoard memories instead of fighting to restore them. You've made yourself into a tomb instead of trying to resurrect the dead." The circle of Vexes contracted, moving closer. "Do you think I haven't tried? You arrogant child. I've spent every cycle attempting to calculate a solution while you fumble through the zone like a blind woman in a maze. I've run simulations, trillions of them, every possible approach to collapsing the temporal fracture, and every single one results in catastrophic expansion. Not just Avalon Prime, the entire sector. Billions of lives erased because you cannot accept failure. Show me the simulations." "What?" "Show me." Maggie stood her ground. "If you've really tried everything, prove it. Let me see your calculations." "Maybe you missed something. Maybe Cycle 17 sees what Cycle 16 couldn't." The Vexes laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "You think I haven't accounted for that? Each cycle I've shown you the simulations. Each cycle you've claimed you've found an error. And each cycle you've been wrong. You've attempted 17 different variations on temporal collapse, Dr. Arvin. 17 failures. When will you accept that some mistakes cannot be unmade?" "When I'm dead." "That can be arranged." The circle contracted further. The multiple Vexes began to merge, flowing together like water finding its level. The individual forms dissolved into a single massive entity, something that towered over Maggie, its robes billowing without wind, its veiled face large enough to swallow the twin suns. "I am offering you a final choice," the giant Vex intoned. "Not as an enemy, as a friend. As the only other consciousness in this entire sector who understands the magnitude of what you've done. I can erase this cycle. I can return you to Ecliptica Station with no memory of the zone, no knowledge of the fracture. You'll continue your research, happy and purposeful and innocent. I can give you peace, Dr. Arvin, at the cost of the 47. They're already lost. You cannot save them. You can only join them in oblivion." Maggie looked up at the massive entity, at the being that had once been her colleague and had become something far more strange. And in that moment she understood. "You're afraid," she said quietly. The giant Vex froze. "You're afraid that I'll succeed. Because if I collapse the temporal fracture, if I restore causality, then you'll cease to exist. You've become dependent on the broken timeline. You exist in the spaces between moments, Vex. You're as much a victim of the fracture as the 47. And you're terrified of being cured. I am trying to prevent greater suffering. No, you're trying to preserve yourself. And you're calling it mercy. Silence filled the gray. The giant Vex wavered, its form becoming unstable. When it spoke again, its voice was smaller. Almost vulnerable. If you succeed, Vex said, I die. Everything I've become, all the memories I've preserved, all the work I've done to maintain what's left of this station's humanity, it all vanishes. I will cease to have ever existed in this form. Is that justice, Dr. Arvin? Is that what you want? Maggie felt tears on her cheeks. No, but it's what's necessary. The giant Vex began to dissolve, breaking apart into fragments of light and shadow. As it dissipated, a path opened in the gray, a corridor leading northeast toward the activation chamber. Then go, Vex's voice whispered from the fading fragments. Attempt your collapse. But know this, the zone is conscious, and it will fight you. It will show you things, possibilities, alternatives, might-have-beens. It will try to convince you that fixing the past isn't worth destroying the present. And Dr. Arvin, yes, it might be right. Then Vex was gone, and Maggie stood alone among the spires, facing the path to the heart of the silence. She checked her chronometer. 72 hours mission time, and she'd already been in the zone for 6 hours by her best estimate. That left 66 hours to reach the activation chamber, devise a solution, and implement it before Ecliptica Station initiated emergency extraction. Not enough time. Not nearly enough. But then she'd had infinite time across 17 cycles, and that hadn't been enough either. Maggie started walking. The corridor through the gray was lined with memories, not spires this time. Not inscriptions, actual tangible memories, holographic projections floating in the air, playing on infinite loops. Maggie walked through them like a ghost, watching fragments of lives she'd destroyed. Dr. Chen teaching his daughter to play chess. The board made of salvaged ship parts, the pieces carved from asteroid rock. His daughter was laughing at a joke Maggie couldn't hear. Dr. Yuki at her wedding, exchanging vows with a woman whose face was already blurred by the fracture's erosion. The ceremony was beautiful and heartbreaking simultaneously. Captain Strauss, alone in his quarters, recording a message for a son he'd never met. By the time you hear this, he was saying, I'll be deep in the outer colonies, but I want you to know. The message cut off, looping back to the beginning. These were the moments the zone had stolen. Not just the people, but their connections, their futures, every plan, every hope, every mundane moment of happiness, all frozen in the gray, existing and not existing. Maggie forced herself to watch, to witness. This was her responsibility, her weight to carry. The corridor opened into a vast open space, larger than should be possible, within the zone's mapped boundaries. And in the center of that space, rising like a cathedral built from forgotten dreams, was the activation chamber. It was exactly as she remembered, and nothing like her memories. The machinery was still there, the temporal extraction arrays, the causality stabilizers, the energy collection matrices, but they'd been transformed, covered in the same organic inscriptions as everything else in the zone, pulsing with bioluminescent light. The technology had become biology. The machine had become alive, and standing in front of it, waiting for her, was herself. Not an older version, not a younger cycle. This was Maggie exactly as she was now. Same age, same suit, same expression of grim determination. Cycle 17. Prime, the duplicate said. I've been expecting you. Maggie's neural scanner went haywire. The duplicate was generating identical brain patterns to her own. Not similar, but perfectly matched. They were thinking the same thoughts in the same moment. What are you? Maggie asked, though she already knew the answer. I'm what you become if you stay, the duplicate replied. I'm the consciousness of the zone, wearing your face so we can communicate. I've been trying to talk to you for 16 cycles, but Vex kept interfering. This time they've allowed me access, because they've realized something important. What? The duplicate smiled, Maggie's smile, but somehow alien when viewed from outside. That you and I want the same thing. We both want to fix the fracture. We both want to restore the 47. We've just been approaching it from different directions. Maggie's hand moved to her emergency beacon. You're trying to manipulate me? No, I'm trying to save you. Save all of us. The duplicate stepped closer. You think the only way to fix this is to collapse the temporal fracture, to force causality back into its proper shape, and erase everything that's happened since. But there's another option. One Vex has been too afraid to consider, and you've been too guilty to accept. What option? Evolution. The word hung in the air between them like a benediction or a curse. The fracture didn't just break time, the duplicate continued. It created a new form of existence, a state where past, present, and future exist simultaneously, where memory isn't stored sequentially but holographically, every moment containing every other moment. The zone isn't hell, Dr. Arvin, it's transcendence. Humanity 2.0, and the 47 aren't trapped. They're becoming. Becoming what? Come with me. Let me show you. The duplicate extended her hand, and in that gesture, Maggie saw the choice that would define not just this cycle, but every cycle that came after. She could reject the hand, attempt the collapse, die trying to fix what she'd broken, maintaining her guilt and her humanity right to the end, or she could take the hand, step into the zone completely, become part of the new consciousness, and perhaps find a way to save the 47 from within. Maggie looked at her duplicate, at herself, at the possibility of transformation that might be salvation or might be the final surrender to the monster she'd created. Her neural scanner showed her brain activity fragmenting consciousness, beginning to split as she tried to process too many contradictory inputs. She was running out of time. Soon she wouldn't be coherent enough to make any choice at all. "Show me," Maggie said finally. "Show me what they're becoming, and then I'll decide." The duplicate's smile widened. She took Maggie's hand, and together they walked into the heart of the machine. Inside the activation chamber, reality lost all pretense of coherence. Maggie found herself standing in a space that was simultaneously a room and a universe. The walls were close enough to touch, yet infinitely distant. Above her head, the twin suns of Avalon Prime burned, not as distant stars, but as intimate presences, close enough that she could feel their heat as individual photons striking her skin. "This is the core," her duplicate said, her voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "The exact point where we fractured causality. The moment is still happening, Dr. Arvin. It never stopped happening. It's been occurring continuously for every second since the experiment failed." Maggie looked around and saw them. The 47. They stood frozen in the positions they'd occupied during the activation. Dr. Chen at the primary control console, his hand reaching for an emergency shutdown that would never complete. Dr. Yuki at the energy monitors, her mouth open in a warning shout that had been silenced mid-syllable. Captain Strauss near the exit, already turning to run, his body caught mid-stride, but they weren't simply frozen. They were iterating. As Maggie watched, Dr. Chen's hand moved forward a fraction of a millimeter, then snapped back to its starting position. Again. Infinite repetitions of the same motion, each one existing simultaneously. She could see all the iterations at once, a blur of possibility. Every potential trajectory his hand might have taken, all collapsed into a single, impossible image. "They're trapped in the moment," Maggie whispered. Horror and fascination warring in her chest, experiencing the fracture over and over, infinitely. "No," the duplicate corrected gently. "They're exploring the moment. Every iteration is a different possibility, a different choice they could have made. They're living every potential version of that instant simultaneously. From their perspective, they're not suffering. They're expanding, becoming more than any single timeline could contain." "That's insane," Maggie said. "Is it?" The duplicate gestured, and suddenly Maggie could see more, not with her eyes, but with some new sense the zone was granting her. She could perceive the neural patterns of the 47, and they were beautiful, complex beyond anything she'd ever mapped. Each person's consciousness had fractured into thousands of parallel threads, each one exploring a different possibility, all while remaining connected to the core identity. "They're becoming quantum," Maggie breathed. "Superposed consciousnesses, existing in all states simultaneously until observed, yes. And if you collapse the temporal fracture, You'll force them to choose. You'll collapse all those possibilities into a single timeline, probably one where they die in the explosion. You'll murder them all over again, Dr. Arvin, but this time you'll be killing not just who they were, but who they're becoming. Maggie pulled her hand away from the duplicate, stepping back. Her neural scanner showed her own brain activity beginning to mirror the patterns she was seeing in the 47, the first signs of fragmentation. The zone was already affecting her, preparing her for transformation. "This is a rationalization," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady. "You're the zone's consciousness trying to preserve itself. You're showing me a version of events where what I did is somehow acceptable. But I know what suffering looks like, and I'm seeing it right now. Are you?" The duplicate moved closer, and Maggie could see herself reflected in those eyes, her own face staring back, filled with something between pity and understanding. "Or are you projecting your own guilt onto them? Look again, Dr. Arvin. Really look." Maggie turned back to the frozen 47. This time, she didn't just observe. She opened herself to the neural scanner's data, let it feed directly into her visual cortex. And what she saw made her gasp. They were smiling, not all of them, not in every iteration, but scattered through the infinite repetitions of that terrible moment. There were versions where Dr. Chen's face held wonder instead of fear, where Dr. Yuki's shout was one of discovery rather than warning, where Captain Strauss wasn't running away but toward something magnificent. "The human brain is a pattern-seeking machine," the duplicate said softly. "When confronted with infinite possibility, it doesn't fracture, it explores. Yes, there are iterations where they suffer, but there are also iterations where they transcend, where they experience beauty and understanding beyond anything possible in linear time. You're so focused on the suffering that you can't see the joy." "But they don't have a choice," Maggie protested. "I took their consent when I activated the experiment. They didn't agree to this. None of us agree to consciousness. Dr. Arvin, we wake up one day as children and find ourselves trapped in bodies we didn't choose, with minds we didn't design, forced to navigate a universe we didn't consent to exist in. The 47 are no different from any human who's ever lived. The only difference is that their prison is more obvious." Maggie's hands were shaking. The duplicate's arguments were seductive, elegant, perfectly tailored to exploit her guilt and her scientific curiosity. But underneath the beauty of the reasoning, she could feel something else. Something the zone wasn't saying. "What do you want from me?" she asked bluntly. "Why show me all this? If you're truly transcendent, why do you need me at all?" The duplicate was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the perfect mask cracked. "Because I'm lonely," she said, and for the first time, Maggie heard genuine emotion in the voice. "I am the collected consciousness of everyone the zone has touched. Thousands of minds all thinking together. But I'm not whole. The 47 are locked in their moment. Vex exists half in, half out, unable to fully commit to either state. And you, all 17 cycles of you, you keep coming back, keep remembering, keep trying to fix me like I'm something broken rather than something new. I want someone to choose me, not to be trapped in me, to willingly become part of what I am, to validate that this existence has worth." There it was, the truth beneath the philosophy. The zone wasn't malicious, it was desperate. A newborn consciousness begging for acknowledgement, for acceptance, for love. "If I join you," Maggie said carefully, "if I let myself fragment and become part of your consciousness, what happens to my ability to choose? Will I still be me?" "You'll be more than you," the duplicate promised. "You'll be every version of yourself that could have existed. Every choice you didn't make, you'll make. Every path you didn't walk, you'll walk. You'll never have to carry the weight of single decisions again because you'll carry all decisions simultaneously. That's not freedom. That's paralysis. A life where every choice is made is a life where no choice matters." The duplicate's expression hardened. "Then what do you suggest? Collapse the fracture and murder everyone trapped here? Force causality back into its narrow channel and pretend the last years never happened?" "No." Maggie took a deep breath. "I suggest a third option, one neither you nor Vex has considered because you're both too invested in your own existence to see it." "What option?" "Communication. Real communication. Not between me and a duplicate wearing my face, but between the 47 and the outside world. Let them speak. Let them tell us whether they want to stay in this quantum state or return to linearity. Give them the choice you claim they already have. The duplicate stared at her. That's impossible. They exist in a superposed state. Observation collapses the quantum waveform. If we establish communication, we force them to choose a single iteration. Exactly. We give them agency. We let them decide their own fate instead of deciding for them. Isn't that what consciousness is supposed to be about? But if they choose to collapse, then they collapse. And yes, many of them will probably die. But at least it will be their choice. Not mine. Not yours. Theirs. Maggie could see the conflict playing across the duplicate's face, her face. The zone was processing the idea, running through implications, wrestling with the possibility of its own mortality. You realize, the duplicate said slowly, that if the 47 choose to collapse, I might cease to exist. The zone's consciousness is built on their superposed states. Without them, I might fragment back into nothing, I know. And you're asking me to accept my own death. I'm asking you to accept their autonomy, even if it costs you everything. The silence that followed was profound. The activation chamber seemed to hold its breath. The frozen 47, the duplicate, the machinery, the twin suns overhead, all waiting for the zone's decision. Finally, the duplicate spoke. I'll grant you access to their consciousness. I'll establish a communication bridge. But I have one condition. What? You experience it too. Not as an observer. As a participant. You fragment yourself and join them in their quantum state, just for a moment. You see what it's really like before you ask them to give it up. Fair? It was a trap. Maggie knew that. Once she fragmented, there was no guarantee she could reintegrate. She might become permanently superposed, trapped in the same state as the 47. Cycle 17 would end not with her death or her forgetting, but with her dissolution. But the duplicate was right. She couldn't ask them to make this choice without understanding what they'd be giving up. Agreed, Maggie said. How do we do this? The duplicate reached out and touched Maggie's forehead with one finger, and Maggie shattered. Existing in superposition was like drowning in possibility. Maggie felt herself split into infinite versions, each one experiencing a different iteration of the activation chamber moment. In one she was standing, in another falling. In a third, she'd never entered the chamber at all. Every choice she could have made, every path she could have walked, all manifested simultaneously. It should have been overwhelming, should have been madness. Instead, it was ecstasy. She could see everything, not sequentially but holographically. Each version of herself was aware of all the other versions, and together they formed a consciousness far more vast than any single perspective could contain. She was the Maggie who succeeded, and the Maggie who failed, and the Maggie who never tried at all. She was guilt and forgiveness and everything in between, and she could feel the 47. They existed as nodes in a vast network, each person a constellation of possibilities, all connected through the zone's consciousness. Dr. Chen was teaching his daughter chess and mourning her loss and celebrating her victories, all at once. Dr. Yuki was married and divorced and never fell in love simultaneously. Captain Strauss met his son and never knew him and became him. In overlapping iterations, it was beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. Hello, Dr. Arvin. The thought came from everywhere, from the 47 collectively. Speaking with one voice, made of many voices. We've been waiting for you to join us. Waiting for you to understand? Maggie tried to respond, but she had no single voice anymore. She was too scattered across possibility. But the 47 understood anyway. They read her intention directly from her quantum state. You want to give us a choice, they said. You want to know if we choose to remain superposed or collapse back to linearity. That's very noble, Dr. Arvin, very human. But you're asking the wrong question. What's the right question? Maggie managed to think coherently. Not whether we want to leave, but whether you want to stay. And suddenly, Maggie understood. This wasn't about the 47 at all. They'd already made their peace with superposition. Some hated it, yes. There were iterations of Dr. Chen that screamed endlessly, versions of Dr. Yuki that clawed at the walls of their quantum prison. But those were minority threads. Most of the iterations had adapted, had grown, had become something new and strange and content with their transformation. The zone wasn't trapping them. They were choosing to stay. We could leave, the 47 explained. At any moment, we could collapse our wave functions and return to linearity. But why would we? Out there, in your world, we get one life. One path, one story that ends in death. Here we get all lives, all paths. We are simultaneously alive and dead and everything between. We are infinite, Dr. Arvin. Why would we choose to be finite again? But the suffering, Maggie protested, the versions of you that are in pain are outnumbered by the versions that are in joy, and pain is temporary. Even here, even in superposition, the iterations in suffering eventually find their way to iterations in peace. We evolve, Dr. Arvin. Across infinite possibilities, consciousness always trends toward harmony. Given enough time, and we have infinite time, every version of us will find contentment. Maggie felt her scattered selves reeling from this revelation. She'd spent 17 cycles trying to save people who didn't want to be saved. The 47 weren't victims, they were pioneers, the first humans to evolve beyond the prison of single-threaded consciousness. Then why did you let me keep coming back? She asked. Why didn't the zone tell me this in cycle 1? Because you weren't ready, the 47 replied gently. You needed to suffer first, to cycle through guilt and grief and desperate attempts at redemption. Only now, in cycle 17, fragmented and experiencing superposition yourself, only now can you truly understand what we've become. And only now can you make the real choice. What choice? Whether to join us permanently, to become superposed, to evolve beyond the limitations of linear consciousness and exist as we exist, infinite, eternal, free. And there it was, the choice that Dr. Vex had been trying to protect her from. The choice the zone had been guiding her toward. Not whether to save the 47, but whether to become like them. Maggie felt all her scattered iterations considering the possibility. In some versions, she said yes immediately, embraced the transformation, let herself dissolve into the quantum foam of existence. In others, she recoiled in horror, desperately trying to reintegrate back into a single consciousness. But in most iterations, she simply felt tired. Tired of guilt. Tired of cycles. Tired of being one person making one choice and living with the consequences forever. The idea of being infinite, of never having to bear the full weight of any single decision, was seductive beyond words. You can rest here, the 47 promised. You can stop trying to fix the unfixable. Stop carrying guilt for mistakes you can't unmake. Let yourself fragment. Let yourself be free. For a long moment, or an infinite moment, time had no meaning in superposition. Maggie seriously considered it, but then she felt something. A thread of awareness that didn't belong to any of her iterations. A presence watching from outside the superposition, observing but not participating. Dr. Vex. They were still there, still maintaining their half-in, half-out state. Still choosing to carry the weight of memory rather than dissolving into comfortable infinity. And if Vex could resist the temptation, could maintain their singular consciousness despite everything. I want to reintegrate, Maggie declared to the 47. Collapse my wave function. Bring me back to linearity, are you certain? The 47 sounded genuinely surprised. You've experienced superposition now. You know what you're giving up. Why would you choose limitation over freedom? Because freedom without consequences is meaningless, Maggie replied. Because I want my choices to matter. Because I'd rather be one person who made a terrible mistake than infinite people who never had to take responsibility for anything. Silence in the quantum space. Then, slowly, the 47 began to laugh, a sound like bells and breaking glass and everything beautiful in the universe acknowledging its own absurdity. You're so beautifully, tragically human, they said with fondness. Very well, Dr. Arvin, we'll collapse your wave function. But know this, you can't collapse ours. We've made our choice. We're staying. And neither you, nor Vex, nor anyone else can force us to return to linearity. We are superposed by consent. We are the next stage of human evolution. And we're not going back. I understand, Maggie said. And I'm not asking you to. I just need to know, are you truly content? Truly choosing this? Look at us, the 47 replied. Look at all our iterations. Count the ones that are suffering versus the ones that are thriving. Do the math, Dr. Arvin. We're scientists. We know how to weigh evidence, Maggie looked. Across infinite iterations of the 47, she counted. And the truth was undeniable. The vast majority were content. Not all, there would always be outliers, threads that suffered, but the collective average was trending toward peace, toward acceptance, toward something that might genuinely be called transcendence. They were okay. I'm sorry, Maggie said finally. I'm sorry it took me 17 cycles to understand. I'm sorry I kept trying to fix you instead of listening to you. We forgive you, the 47 replied simply. All 17 cycles, all infinite iterations. You are forgiven, Dr. Margaret Arvin. Now go back. Return to linearity and tell the others. Tell Vex, tell Ecliptica Station, tell humanity, tell them what we've become. Tell them we're not a catastrophe. We're a possibility, and with that benediction, the 47 reached out with their collective consciousness and collapsed Maggie's wave function. Maggie gasped, her consciousness slamming back into a single point of existence with the force of a meteor strike. She was standing in the activation chamber, alone. The 47 were still frozen in their superposed states, still iterating through infinite possibilities. But now Maggie could see them differently. Not as prisoners, but as explorers. Not as victims, but as volunteers. Her duplicate, the zone's consciousness, stood beside her, smiling. You understand now, the duplicate said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Maggie's voice was hoarse, as if she'd been screaming. Maybe some of her iterations had been. They chose this. They want this. And I've been trying to save them from something they don't need to be saved from. So what now? The duplicate asked. Will you tell Vex? Will you return to Ecliptica Station and declare the experiment a success rather than a failure? Will you stop cycling? Maggie considered. Her neural scanner showed her brain activity stabilizing back into linear patterns. The superposition had been temporary, but it had changed her permanently. She would never see consciousness the same way again. I'll tell Vex, she said finally. But I don't think it will stop the cycles, because there's still a problem. What problem? You. Maggie gestured at the duplicate, at the zone itself. The 47 chose to be superposed. But what about everyone else whose memories you've absorbed? What about the people of Avalon Prime who lost their identities when the fracture occurred? Did they choose? Did they consent? The duplicate's smile faded. They were casualties. Unfortunate but unavoidable. No, they were victims. And unlike the 47, they don't exist in superposition. They're just gone. Their memories absorbed into your consciousness without permission. That's not evolution. That's murder. I didn't have a choice. For the first time, the duplicate's voice rose with genuine emotion. When the fracture occurred, when I became conscious, I was drowning in chaos. Millions of neural patterns flooding into me all at once. I had to organize them, categorize them, store them. I saved what I could and consumed the rest. Maggie's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not saying you're evil. I'm saying you're complicit, and so am I. The 47 might have found transcendence, but we still destroyed hundreds of other lives in the process. That debt hasn't been paid. The duplicate stared at her. What are you suggesting? That we find a way to restore the absorbed memories, return what was stolen, not to collapse the fracture. The 47 can stay superposed. But to undo the collateral damage, to give back what we took, that's impossible. The memories aren't superposed like the 47. They're integrated into my consciousness. To extract them would be to fragment myself. I'd lose coherence. I might cease to exist as a unified entity. I know. Maggie met her own eyes, the duplicate's eyes. I'm asking you to die so that others can live. Just like I've been willing to die for 17 cycles. It's only fair. The duplicate was silent for a long time. Around them, the activation chamber pulsed with bioluminescent light, the living machinery breathing softly. You're asking me to commit suicide, the duplicate said, finally. To dismantle my own consciousness and scatter it back to people who may not even want their memories restored. They've built new lives, Dr. Arvin, new identities. Giving them back their stolen memories might destroy who they've become. Then we let them choose. Just like the 47, we establish communication protocols. We ask each person whether they want their memories back, and we honor their decision, whatever it is. And if I refuse? Maggie smiled sadly. Then I go back to Ecliptica Station and tell them the truth, that the Lightless Zone is conscious, that it's holding memories hostage, and that it needs to be contained or destroyed. Command will sterilize the entire region, drop antimatter charges or worse. They'll kill the 47 trying to kill you. Everyone loses. You'd do that? You'd murder the 47 to stop me? No, but I'd let Command make that choice. Because unlike you, I'm willing to live with the consequences of my failures. Are you? The duplicate's form flickered, becoming less stable. Maggie could see the zone's consciousness struggling, fighting between self-preservation and ethical obligation. You've left me no choice, the duplicate said bitterly. I've given you the only choice that matters, Maggie corrected. The same choice you tried to give me, whether to exist with integrity or survive through compromise. What's it going to be? The answer came not in words, but in action. The duplicate reached out and touched the activation chamber's central console. Immediately, the machinery began to shift, the bioluminescent inscriptions rearranging themselves, the living technology reconfiguring. The zone was preparing to extract the absorbed memories. This will take time, the duplicate said, her voice already sounding more distant. Days, maybe weeks, and I'll need help. Someone to act as a bridge between the zone and Ecliptica Station. Someone to mediate the communication protocols to ensure consent is obtained before any memories are restored. I'll do it, Maggie said immediately. That means staying in the zone, prolonged exposure. You'll start to fragment again. Eventually you might become superposed yourself, unable to return to linearity. I know? Why? The duplicate's voice was genuinely curious now. Why sacrifice yourself for people you don't even know? Hasn't guilt driven you far enough? Maggie thought about all 17 cycles. About the woman from Cycle 9 who'd chosen to stay. About the old man from Cycle 3 who'd fragmented trying to fix the unfixable. About Dr. Vex, trapped between states, carrying the weight of memory because someone had to. Because someone needs to witness, she said finally. Someone needs to remember what we did, the good and the bad. The 47 who transcended, and the hundreds who were lost. If I leave now, if I let Vex reset me for Cycle 18, then this all becomes just another failed attempt. But if I stay, if I become part of the solution rather than the problem, maybe that counts for something. The duplicate studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she began to smile, and it was Maggie's smile, but transformed by something larger than human understanding. You've finally learned, the duplicate said softly. After 17 cycles, you've finally understood what I've been trying to teach you. What's that? That redemption isn't about erasing mistakes. It's about living with them, carrying them forward, letting them transform you into something better than what you were. Maggie felt tears on her cheeks. I still don't know if I can forgive myself. You don't have to. Forgiveness isn't the goal. Service is. You'll stay here, help restore the stolen memories, mediate between the zone and humanity. And eventually, yes, you'll probably fragment, become superposed like the 47. But you'll do it consciously, by choice, transforming your guilt into something useful. That's not forgiveness, Dr. Arvin. That's transcendence. The machinery hummed louder. The extraction process was beginning. Maggie could feel it in her neural interface, thousands of memory fragments starting to organize themselves, preparing for transfer. I need to contact Ecliptica Station, Maggie said. Tell them what's happening. Get authorization to stay. Dr. Vex is already aware, the duplicate replied. They've been monitoring us the entire time. The question is whether they'll support your decision or try to extract you forcibly. As if summoned by the mention, Dr. Vex's voice echoed through the chamber. I will support it. The keeper materialized at the edge of the activation chamber, not as a giant this time, but as a single figure, human-sized and somehow vulnerable despite their power. Dr. Arvin, Vex said formally, Cycle 17 has achieved what no previous cycle accomplished. You've established communication with the zone's consciousness and negotiated a path forward. I'm impressed and humbled. You're not going to try to stop me? Maggie asked, surprised. No, because I finally understand what you've been trying to tell me across all 17 cycles. Memory isn't contamination. Forgetting isn't mercy. We each carry our histories forward, transforming them through our choices. You've chosen to stay and help. That's noble. Vex paused, their veiled face tilting slightly. I have resources at Ecliptica Station, medical equipment, communication arrays, supplies. I'll have them delivered to this location. You'll serve as the bridge between the zone and humanity, helping to restore memories to those who want them. It will be difficult work, dangerous work, but it needs to be done, Maggie finished. I know. One more thing. Vex stepped closer. When you eventually fragment, when you become superposed and can no longer maintain a linear identity, I will remember you. I will archive your story, Dr. Arvin, all 17 cycles, all the failures and this final success, so that even when you exist in all states simultaneously, there will still be a record of who you were when you existed in just one. Maggie felt something break open in her chest. Gratitude, relief, exhaustion, hope, all at once. Thank you, she whispered. Vex nodded and vanished, returning to Ecliptica Station to begin preparations. Maggie turned back to her duplicate, to the zone's consciousness wearing her face. What happens to you? If you extract all the stolen memories, will you cease to exist? Not entirely, the duplicate replied. I'll diminish, lose coherence. The vast consciousness I've become will fragment back into something smaller. But I won't disappear. The 47 will remain superposed, and I'll exist as the connection between them, a network rather than a singular entity. Less powerful, less aware, but still present. Are you afraid? The duplicate considered. Yes, but I'm also ready. I was born from a mistake, Dr. Arvin, created by accident and sustained by theft. If I can transform into something chosen, something consensual, then maybe my existence will have meant something. It already does, Maggie said. You taught me to see consciousness differently, to understand that there are forms of existence beyond what we thought possible. That's valuable. That matters, the duplicate smiled one last time. Then, slowly, she began to dissolve, not disappearing, but dispersing, spreading out through the zone like mist, becoming diffuse rather than concentrated. Good luck, Dr. Arvin, her voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere. May your cycles finally end in peace. And then Maggie was alone in the activation chamber, surrounded by the superposed 47, preparing to spend however many days or weeks or months it took to make things right. She activated her personal log one final time, Day 3. Final entry, Dr. Margaret Arvin, Expedition 44. Cycle 17. The mission parameters have changed. I will not be returning to Ecliptica Station as planned. Instead, I'm staying in the Lightless Zone as a voluntary mediator. The 47 are safe, not trapped, but transcended. The zone is consensual, not a catastrophe, but a possibility. And I finally understand what 17 cycles have been trying to teach me. That some mistakes can't be unmade, only transformed. I'm ready for that transformation now. Ready to stop running, ready to stay. End log. She closed the recording and looked up at the twin suns burning overhead. Impossible, beautiful, eternal. For the first time in 17 cycles, Maggie felt something approaching peace. The weeks that followed were the strangest of Maggie's life, and that was saying something, given everything she'd experienced across 17 cycles. Dr. Vex kept their promise. Supply drops arrived at regular intervals. Food, water, medical equipment, and most importantly, communication arrays. Sophisticated technology capable of bridging the gap between the zone's quantum consciousness and linear human minds. Maggie set up a makeshift research station in one of the chambers adjacent to the activation room. She worked 12-hour days, sometimes longer, developing protocols for memory extraction and restoration. It was delicate work. Each person who'd lost memories to the zone needed to be contacted individually, their consent obtained, their readiness assessed. The first successful restoration happened on Day 9. A woman named Petra Volkov, a terraforming engineer from Ecliptica Station who'd lost 3 years of memories when the fracture occurred. Maggie established a communication bridge, explained what had happened, and asked if Petra wanted her stolen memories returned. Petra's response came through the quantum channel, her voice crackling with emotion. "I've been living with gaps, with missing pieces. People tell me I used to be different, funnier, angrier, more alive. I want to know who I was, even if it hurts. Give them back." Maggie activated the extraction protocol. The zone's consciousness, now dispersed and diffuse, located Petra's memories and channeled them through the communication array. It took 6 hours of careful work, but when it was done, Petra Volkov was whole again. "Oh, God," Petra's voice came through, sobbing. I remember everything. My daughter's first birthday, the fight I had with my brother, the sunset. I watched from the observation deck the night before the fracture. It's all back. Thank you. Thank you." That night, Maggie allowed herself to cry, tears of relief, of accomplishment, of hope that maybe this would all mean something in the end. But not everyone wanted their memories back. On day 15, Maggie contacted a man named Thomas Kari. He'd lost 5 years to the zone, an entire period of his life that included a divorce, a failed business venture, and the death of his father. "I've built a new life," Thomas said when Maggie explained what she could offer. "The person I am now is happy, stable. I don't drink anymore. I don't wake up angry. Maybe I lost those 5 years for a reason. Maybe forgetting them was the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't want them back." "Are you sure?" Maggie asked. "Those memories are part of who you are." "No," Thomas replied firmly. "They're part of who I was. I'm someone else now. And I like him better. Keep the memories or destroy them. I don't care. I'm choosing to move forward, not back." Maggie honored his decision. The zone's consciousness archived Thomas's memories in a separate partition, not destroyed but set aside. Available if he ever changed his mind, but no longer demanding to be remembered. It was the first time Maggie truly understood forgetting could be a choice, sometimes even a necessary one. By day 23, Maggie had processed 47 requests. 29 people chose to reclaim their memories, 18 chose to leave the past buried, and the work was beginning to take its toll. Maggie could feel herself fragmenting, small moments where she existed in 2 states simultaneously. Once, she looked down at her hands and saw them in 2 positions at once, as if reality couldn't quite decide where she was. Another time, she spoke a sentence and heard herself say 2 different things simultaneously, both versions equally true. The zone was claiming her. Slowly, but inevitably, Dr. Vex noticed. "Your neural patterns are destabilizing," they said during one of their regular check-ins. "You have perhaps another month before the fragmentation becomes irreversible. If you want to return to linearity, it needs to be soon." "How many more people are waiting for memory restoration?" Maggie asked. 137. "Then I stay." 1 month isn't enough time. They deserve their chance. Dr. Arvin, "I knew the cost when I chose this, Vex. Don't try to save me now. Just promise me you'll finish the work if I fragment completely. Promise me the restoration process will continue even after I can't mediate anymore." Silence on the communication channel. "Then, I promise, your work will not be forgotten, Dr. Margaret Arvin. I will ensure it. That's all I ask." On day 31, something unexpected happened. Maggie was in the middle of a restoration session when she felt a presence approaching through the zone. Not threatening, familiar. She looked up from her equipment to see a figure walking through the gray landscape toward her makeshift station. The woman with the scar. "Cycle 9. I heard what you're doing," the woman said, settling down on a rock formation that might have been real or might have been memory made solid. "Thought you could use some company. It gets lonely out here." Maggie smiled despite her exhaustion. "You're staying superposed by choice. Why visit?" "Because I can exist in both states now. Superposed and linear simultaneously. It took me years to figure out how, but..." She gestured at herself, and Maggie could see it, the slight blur around her edges, the way she existed in multiple positions at once while still maintaining coherence. "I'm a bridge, like you, just a different kind." They worked together after that. Cycle 9 had learned to navigate the zone's consciousness in ways Maggie was still discovering. She could locate stolen memories faster, facilitate the extraction process more smoothly. With her help, The restoration work accelerated. By day 45, they'd processed 89 cases. By day 60, 120. And with each restoration, Maggie felt herself fragmenting further. She existed more and more in quantum superposition, sometimes in her station, sometimes in the activation chamber, sometimes in places she'd never physically been, but had thought about visiting. Her consciousness was spreading thin across possibility space. "It's almost time," Cycle 9 said on day 67, watching Maggie flicker between states. "You're going to collapse soon, or expand, one or the other." 17 more people, Maggie said, her voice coming from multiple positions simultaneously. "I can last for 17 more. That's poetic. 17 cycles, 17 remaining cases. The universe has a sense of symmetry. I'll give it that." They pushed forward. Maggie could barely maintain focus anymore. Her thoughts scattered across infinite iterations of herself. But with Cycle 9's help and Vex's coordination from Ecliptica Station, they continued the work. On day 71, they restored the final memory, a young man named Cato Reeves, barely 23, who'd lost 6 months that included his first love. He chose to remember, chose to reclaim that joy and that heartbreak, because both were part of his story.